What's up, everybody? It's your favorite painter's favorite nerd, and today we are looking at the Bob the Builder series of a diorama for my Technobot shelf, which is really, spoilers, is just like a snow mountain scene. Once again, I have to kind of always get this information out at the beginning of the video that this is not going to be a tutorial. It's not going to be a how-to. However, on my Patreon, the link is in the description, we do multiple diorama build videos a month. I have videos planned through December, so there should be plenty of stuff there at the $5 level if you are interested that you can take a look at. We usually break them down by build, sometimes carving, painting, backgrounds, special effects, etc., etc. So all that stuff is there if you're interested. Now that the paid promotion is out of the way, we can talk about this. So what we will talk about here, once again, overall process, experience, thoughts, concepts, etc., etc. And as I'm watching this, I'm looking at myself and I'm like, you're wearing the same outfit right now, you bum. But yeah, so this was an attempt to plan. I'm at this stage now where I need to plan for figures. So I have a set of Technobots that was made by Warbitron. It's not the set of Technobots that I want in a perfect world for my shelf. However, at least it represents the characters in some capacity, and I can live with it. At the same time, this shelf I plan on being fairly permanent as long as I'm living, and especially living here. So I want to be able to swap pieces if possible. So what I've been doing with some of the stuff as I'm doing here is I'm using Fans Toys, Aerial Bots, and Stunicons as a rough idea of how big the Technobots could be if they were to be made in more of a proper masterpiece scale. This way, if they end up doing proper masterpiece scale Technobots, I can rest assured that the space that I have allocated for them will still indeed work. Now, the drawback to that is that these characters end up looking a little small in these shelves, and that's just something I got to deal with, right? It's the lesser of two evils for me, which is something that you all have to judge for yourselves. The other thing is I try to keep my environments for Transformers to be more natural and more realistic. I find that they look far better in those environments than they do in your Nemesis or Arc or Cybertron backgrounds, with few exceptions. I've seen it work before, don't get me wrong, but I often find that when you take these super cartoony backgrounds and you incorporate them into the shelf, it ends up kind of dragging down the entire display. It ends up making it all look a little less. It's very similar to like the expression "the rising tide raises all ships." It would be the opposite, right? The lower tide lowers all ships, and that's kind of how I feel about it. So I'm not saying that what I'm doing is right, but it's what's right for me. So the other kind of complication that I run into is, how many environments are there, right? Like I did lava environment for the headmasters. I've done deserts. I've done jungles or beaches. I've done forests. I've done, cities or, man-made things like the Lincoln Memorial one, for example. So like you start running out of ideas and you don't want them to look similar. You want them all to have their own kind of unique sauce. The problem with the Technobots from the cartoon is that they're mainly used on Cybertron, especially the most iconic episode of kind of Grimlock providing the basis for them. Like that's an all Cybertron episode, and that's just not the look that I wanted to go with. So I did what any rational person that spends hundreds of dollars on figures would do, and took a step back, took a seat, looked at my shelves, and tried to play like, what's missing. And in the midst of playing that, I was like, well, snow. Snow is missing. Now, in a perfect world, it would have been a bit better to have this snow environment for a shelf that was going to incorporate Jetfire or Skyfire, depending on your point of view. That's obviously the more iconic setting for him. Doesn't really partake or play a part at all in anything related to the Technobots. But it's obvious, like, missing environment from the shelves. It's bright colors for backgrounds end up kind of making figures pop a bit more. So long story long, I went with a snow environment, and I knew I wanted to put some mountains in the background to kind of make the background a little bit more visually interesting. I know this because when I did my aerial bot shelf, I just did a sky, and when it was all said and done, it looked a little plain. Am I right? Forget it. But it didn't pop the way I wanted it to. That was an homage more so to, there's like an art piece with them all like standing on this embankment with the kind of horizon behind them. It was an homage to that, but it just didn't pay out. So I wanted some kind of sauce in the background. So I figured, what better way to do that than put in some mountains? And I actually, for this, I have a way I've been doing mountains, but I haven't been 100% satisfied with all of them. So I actually went and watched like a bunch of oil painting videos, which is not always beneficial because I'm using mainly acrylics, and oils and acrylics, they just don't respond the same way. They don't act the same way. So that was somewhat of a challenge to just kind of overcome and incorporate the things that did work from the kind of tutorials I was watching and bring them into what I was doing with acrylics. And I think it ended up working pretty well. The other challenge that I was really having was with the texture of the snow itself. Now, I've done snow countless times, mostly because of my Star Wars displays with Hoth and dealing with Hoth. So I've done, I think, three Hoth dioramas at minimum, and I've used different methods of snow for all three. And the one that I found that worked the best ended up being a spackle, but spackle can be very brittle. So I think what I ended up using here was, I think I still used a spackle. I used a different brand. But it might even been wood filler that I used here, because since I've made this, at the very least, I have found that wood filler is quite effective and efficient at texturing stuff, whether it be for desert or snow or any sort of environment like that. So that was the other main kind of challenge that I faced with this, was making sure that the snow looks somewhat believable. And real quick, as this video is kind of going towards the back half, I will say that I will drop out of this towards the end, like I always do, so that you can hear my natural sort of response to it as I put it in for the first time, so to speak, and you can understand my thoughts. The truth is that I'm pretty happy with it, even though it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for the characters in regard to the lore. They could still be there. They can be little adventures that you never knew took place. And also, to give you a point of reference, these are the videos that were on the Patreon. The three on the Patreon, I go through all of the materials that I use as well, and they're in regular speed, whereas these are sped up 400%, which ends up making it like a 12-minute video, and it's like really a series of like 3 15-minute videos, to be fair. But yeah, even looking at this now, I'm like, man, those mountains really turned out nicely. They have a lot of texture to them, which is one of the things that I find myself I often struggle with, specifically in regard to painting backgrounds. And and I don't really I do airbrush stuff, but I usually bring it in at the end to kind of help blend things, for lack of a better term. Airbrushing can make a huge difference, and it's really like having a cheat code in some ways for like really thinning out colors. But I was using thinned out colors before. I can use them again. It's just another kind of tool in the toolbox. And yeah, it's funny, man. Like, you just end up picking up these little skill sets, and then as you build, you continue to add these small skill sets on top of each other and on top of each other and on top of each other, until before you know it, you have this entire toolbox, for lack of a better term, equipped with all of these different solutions to general problems that you come across. And what happens is, even if you have a diorama that doesn't make a whole lot of sense for the characters, you end up being somewhat satisfied just because the diorama looks good in and of itself. You could have put anybody on there. It's just that they look good. You know, there's a couple of regrets I have, like, you know, obviously having a white foreground, a lot of light colors in the background doesn't do a whole lot for a Autobot team that also incorporates a lot of white into their designs. You know what I mean? So that was a bit of a bummer, but overall, you know, good learning process, happy with the product, added some variety to the shelves, added some uniqueness. And spoilers, I'm actually completely done with my Transformer displays now. Like, it's all done. All I have to do is put figures in it, and that's not up to me. That's up to the factory. So it's nice to know that all that stuff is locked and loaded. And as we move through these last couple diorama videos, eventually I'll take you guys on another collection tour so you can see the finished product. But until then, let's move on to how I felt at the time. Done. I think it looks pretty good. I'm not sure if it's right for the figures, but I think it's a nice diorama nonetheless, if that makes any sense. So let's see how they look in it. And yeah, it's fine. It's a good diorama. It's not great figures. It's a small shelf. I think the white is going to help it pop and kind of draw attention to it. So I think it's ultimately going to work. You know, I hope to one day kind of get a better complement of figures. Not better, because these are good figures, just a set of figures that works better or you know, fits in my collection better. But yeah, I'm good with this, I think. You know, I think a lot more will kind of come to light once I get, you know, the bottom one done, and then I only have two more on my Autobot side of dioramas left to go. So, but yeah, I can live with this. If this is what it ultimately has to be for my Technobots, I can live with it. And if I ever get proper scaled ones for, you know, Masterpiece G1, I can swap them and they'll all fit. So, ultimate win, I suppose. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.